Now, the United States has overtaken China in the number of declared deaths from coronavirus. More than 3,400 people have died in the US and more than 180,000 people have been infected. Italy still has the highest death toll. Dr. Ilaria Capua is a former Italian politician and expert in animal-to-human disease transmission. She's with the University of Florida and she joins us now from Gainesville, Florida. Ilaria Capua, welcome. So you're in a unique position, being an expert with very close links with two of the worst affected countries, the US and Italy. First to Italy, more than 12,000 people dead there. On a personal note, how do you feel about seeing this devastation to your home country?
Yes, and thank you for allowing me to do this. I know Australia is a friend of Italy. There's lots of Italians who live in Australia and lots of Australians that love our country. COVID-19 has hit Italy very hard. It has hit Italy as the first Western country, and Lombardy, which is the region that hosts Milan and that is one of the most productive regions of the country, is the region that is accounting for approximately half of the deaths. And so the country is truly experiencing hardships and is, I think, paving the way to good things that are being done, and also showing other countries how things can go wrong. And so I am convinced that the Italian experience will be useful to all the countries of the world.
Ilaria, why has it been so bad there?
So we don't really know. Certainly, it is the result of multi-driver effect, because certainly there are some peculiarities about that particular part of Italy. It is highly interconnected with transportation. There's a lot of human mobility. It has a lot of tourists and people who come in from all over the world. But also it has one of the oldest populations in the country, and it has a health service which unfortunately has really been put under an enormous amount of pressure. There may be other drivers, for example, pollution, but we don't really know. What I can tell you, though, is that the lockdown is making Italy even more beautiful.
Well, why do you say that?
Because dolphins are swimming in the harbors of the big cities, because the air is clean, because we have wildlife that is coming back and is back in our lives.
Yeah, so there is some silver lining there. So there was another terrible daily death toll in Italy in the past 24 hours. Again, more than 800 people. But does it appear the spread in Italy is slowing?
It does, actually. Italy it seems as though we are reaching the plateau of the epidemic curve. So you will probably recall that Italy was the first European country to put in place a lockdown, and this happened on March 8th. And so now we are seeing the effects of that lockdown. And so we are seeing a drop in the number of hospitalized patients and of severe cases, and also of deaths, although the death toll is still very high.
Yeah. Okay, now to the US. There's been an explosion in the number of cases there over the past several days. How has that happened?
Well, I cannot speak for the whole of the US. I live in Florida, and of course, Florida is a state which attracts lots of tourists, and it is a very serious problem for the state. The university where I work is open for business, but classes have all gone online, and we are applying social distancing. We are given instructions on how to behave, and we're just going to have to wait and learn from other countries that were affected before.
Like Italy.
Certainly, Florida is a densely populated state, and it does have an aging population. Although I have to say that Florida, from my experience, has been so good in reacting to natural disasters, for examples as hurricanes, and I'm sure that Florida will be one of the most prepared states.
And so what's your assessment of how it's being handled now, the restrictions that have been put in place? What's your assessment of the speed at which they've been done in the US?
Well, let's say that most of the restrictions were already put in place by a lot of people voluntarily. There wasn't a clear order. I cannot really put it back into time because I'm following many countries, but I know that Miami, for example, is under complete lockdown, and the big cities are reacting in a very efficient way.
Anthony Fauci, the chief medical officer there, was talking about a death toll as high as 200,000 there in the US in the past couple of days. Do you see it possibly getting that high?
I am sure that Tony Fauci, if he said that number, he knows what he's talking about. All I can say is that we only learned about this virus 4 months ago. There is much more we don't know than what we do know, and therefore I think that we will just have to wait and see. I am sure that nobody would have predicted clusters or areas of higher severity like we are observing, for example, in Lombardy, but also in Madrid, and so we will just have to see. I think that some areas that have greater fragilities might suffer more than others, and we will just have to work together as a community, because this is really an issue about a collective responsibility. We are all in this. It's not somebody else's problem. It's our own problem, everyone's problem, and we're going to get out of this together.
Yeah. And Ilaria Capio, you initially trained as a vet in Italy. I think you were at the University of Padua for a while. So science is your specialty. Are you keeping across the developments in efforts to find a vaccine for this? And how far down the track are we? We keep on hearing that a vaccine, best case scenario, is still a year, 18 months away.
Well, yes, at the moment, I actually don't work directly with viruses, because after my experience in politics and in the Italian parliament, I think that it is important that I put this skill at the disposal of scientists and of stakeholders. So I don't have a wet lab, and as you know, my center is the One Health Center. But having said that, making a vaccine takes what it takes, and 12 to 18 months, I think, is reasonable. And all I can say is that it could very well be that we will not need a vaccine for the general population. I am unsure about the coverage of influenza vaccination in Australia. What I can tell you is that in Italy, it's not that high. It's not at that high even in the categories at risk. And so I think that this gigantic public health crisis will also teach us that if all of us were vaccinated for influenza, we would probably have a less severe impact of other diseases like COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I am unsure that we will need a vaccine, or maybe we will need it only for vulnerable populations.
Yeah, okay, it's really interesting to hear that. Okay, great to talk to you. Ilaria Capia there in Florida. Thanks so much for taking the time today to have a chat to us in Australia.
Thank you.